Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server leading up to Wednesday's draft. We're going to be on there all the time. So here's what you can do, okay? You don't even have to tell us you're doing this. Just go to the link in the description, click on it, pay the $2.99, cancel in 2 weeks if you don't like it. You never have to see us again, but you'll want to. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Get the best stuff from Twitter, the most heat anywhere, without having to wade through the rest of Twitter. Plus, we split it into different channels. We make it easy for you. Again, it's Off the Floor. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your $5. Get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks is the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It is legal in the state of Florida, and you can be of all different knowledge levels, and you can still win there. So check it out. It's Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your 5. Get 50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne. Yay. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. Check out all of our recent episodes, including one that Greg Sylvander and I just did with Vince Goodwill from Yahoo, longtime supporter of this program. And when pressed, he said, yeah, I think KD, I think Kevin Durant probably ends up on the Heat, unless some other team swoops in at the last second. So he had that caveat in there. But we are waiting that out as of a Friday afternoon. Still no real significant developments that we can tell. Just a lot of reports out there, a lot of leverage plays, a lot of smoke. We know the Heat are still in it. We also know they're not going to trade their entire team to get him. So those two things have not changed. But there have been other reports over the course of the past week, and we want to address them, although I want to be clear, they're not my reports, okay? So I'm not saying that these things are happening or going to happen. There's a lot of smoke, as I said, that's put out there. And one of the ways that smoke is put out there is if you want a player, but you're trying to say we're not going to trade everything we have for him, you kind of let it out there, or you let others let it out there, that you would be willing to go another direction. You have to have, life is leverage, right? In everything, life is leverage, or leverage is life. And so you're trying to establish leverage in these situations. So we're going to address a couple of these players without saying, again, that the Heat are going hard for these players right now either. And then as we start to get more of our own information about this, we'll do episodes specific to that. But the player that's been talked about the most recently, and it's interesting in the sense that the Heat had negotiations with his team, obviously, to trade Jimmy Butler, the trade deadline, is Jonathan Kuminga. And the reason that Kuminga's name is coming up, and Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong about some of this, is A, we're talking about a former top 10 pick who has a lot of potential, who has not seemed to be on the right side of Steve Kerr a lot, I guess, for his defense and his sort of decision-making, basketball IQ, shot selection, that kind of stuff, has flashed a lot of talent at times. We even saw it at times in the playoffs, but also hasn't fit all that well with Jimmy Butler since Jimmy came in, because they tend to occupy a lot of the same spots on the floor. And so Kerr had even said that he was trying to separate them as much as possible. And it's come up again that that the Heat specifically might have interest in him. And I just want to clarify again, they talked to the Warriors, to Mike Dunleavy Jr., to make a trade at the deadline. They didn't acquire Kuminga. They acquired Andrew Wiggins at that time, and I guess Kyle Anderson as well as part of that deal. Let me just ask you, before we get into the specifics of their interest in him and all the rest of this, and why. And again, I'm going through his numbers right now. And if you look at his contract, he's a restricted free agent, basically. Okay, so he's due a possible, bigger contract and extension. Over the past 4 years together, he made $24 million over 4 years. And now he's looking for something well north of that for the first season. But what do you think of Kuminga as a player?
I mean, he's so complex in the sense of there's things you like about him, and then it's there's things that you would like to change. And I think he's one of those guys that he's one of the prime examples when, you talk about Steve Kerr, when his Warriors fans have talked about for years that one of his main weaknesses, although he's a great coach, is going to go down probably as an all-time coach, one of his weaknesses is developing young talent. And I'm not trying to blame it all on him. I just think it's one of those things where, it kind of ties back to the stuff we've talked about forever with the Heat, with the 2 timeline stuff, where you're trying to develop guys while also trying to win, and do right by your best players who are all about trying to win right now. It's a little bit tough to balance that with a player who maybe thinks more of himself, right? And I'm not even trying to assassinate Kuminga's character or anything here, but like you mentioned, a guy who was highly touted, who obviously has great size and athleticism for a wing, has the type of tools and just athletic traits to be able to be a two-way talent, even if he doesn't have if you don't believe he has all-star upside anymore, right? Let's say you don't believe that. Even if that's the case, he gets to the rim. He can get into the paint, and for all his flaws, got up 7 shots per 75 possessions at the rim last season, and has been doing that for a while. There is something tantalizing about that. But then when you go and this is me after having looked into some of the numbers, and I was looking, he had a big true shooting percentage drop last season, and I was looking into why. His 3-point percentage is obviously something that's never been great, right? So that's not something that had a huge drop last year. That's something we already know about. You have to try to get him into a league average guy there percentage wise. But the mid-range stuff, he takes a whole lot of middies. I didn't realize he was taking around 5, per 75 possessions last season. I knew that he kind of liked that. And look, middies are not inherently a bad thing. I just think it's about in the new NBA, in the modern NBA, I should say, it's about guys who are really, really good at it. Taking, right? Those are shots that you can settle into if other things are not available. And it's usually the guys who are great at them. You're seeing it now with Shea and even Jalen Williams. Those guys are very good at that, right? So you're okay with that. The Heat have been a team that's been doing the mid-range stuff forever. So it's not an inherently bad thing. It's just that I think you see more value from him when he's getting to the rim. And the mid-range percentages are just not where you would want them to be for him to be taking the amount that he is. So although it's I don't mind that he can settle into that when other things get tough, right? He shot 35% from the mid-range last season on pretty good ball. That's just not – that's terrible. That's really not good at all for the mid-range. You want that number to be, in the mid-40s, around there. And I just think in general, he hasn't shown enough to be able to be that type of 3-level scorer that I think he's trying to be. And I think if you can hone him in a little bit, right, and try to encourage him to be more about getting to the rim. And this is probably stuff that Warriors have been saying for years, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things where you're trying to talk himself into what he can be. But the problem is you're trying to pay him this summer. So it's a very tough thing to be sure about where are you sure that he can get to that? Or are you paying for what he is now? And I think that's something that they would have to consider.
Let me go through some of the raw basic numbers with him, because I think this is part of why he becomes tantalizing. And then it's like you said, then you got to dive into the numbers a little bit more to see where these points are coming from. So he comes in the league at age 19. He plays 70 games. He starts 12. He averages a little over 9 points a game. Second season, starts 16 games, plays 67 at age 20, averages 9.9 points, 3.4 rebounds. I've never been a high assist guy per minute. That's another thing we can talk about. Then age 21, in the 2023-24 season, averages 16 points, almost 5 rebounds, and a couple of assists on 53% shooting. Now, that included 32% from 3. This is kind of what you're talking about. He shot 58% from 2. The majority of that was because he's so efficient at the rim. And then you look at his last season, he played 47 games, started 10. A lot of conversation last year about kind of his fit, and that was before even Jimmy came in. And he dipped a little bit, but still averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds. He had one playoff game where he scored about he scored a dozen points in about 3 minutes. I mean, he can be, a quick impact scorer, but again, it's where it comes from. And I keep getting into this thought is that Kerr and Spo share some traits. Now, Kerr's offense has always been very read and react. He trusts the players to make decisions to play off of Steph, and he has two guys, and he had three when he had Clay, who were so high IQ with Clay, Draymond, and Curry that's the style they learned how to play. Then KD picked up that style. Okay, it took a little bit of time, but then obviously he emerged as a Finals MVP for them. And then Jimmy came in and picked it up right away because we know that he obviously has a very high basketball IQ. And that seems to be the issue with Kuminga, is that they want him to play quickly. They want him to get the ball out of his hands. They want him to shoot from certain spots, but he keeps defaulting from when I've watched him, okay, in the moments where he's gotten pulled, he keeps defaulting to those habits that don't really fit with Golden State's offense. So on the other side of this, I want to ask you, how would it fit with Spo? Because I feel like some Heat fans are looking at Kuminga and saying, okay, we'd rather have him than Wiggins. There's more upside there. He's 8 years younger. Golden State seems to want Wiggins back. Could you sign Kuminga to a contract and flip Wiggins back to him? Because Wiggins seems like a better fit with Curry, with even with Jimmy, although he played with Jimmy before, we know. But maybe in that circumstance, then it might fit better. And we get the upside of Kuminga on a longer timeline with him. But I'm going to ask you on the other side of this, does it work with the way that Spo has traditionally set up his offenses? And could he coach him to, I don't know, be just help facilitate and sort of lubricate the offense more than he did in Golden State, where it seemed like he stopped it all the time? Before we do, though, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Don't stop doing this if this is the way you're doing it, because it's the most efficient way. It's called Cash App. Probably you've downloaded it already, but if you hadn't, this is your opportunity to do so and get some extra money. All the hosts of 5 on the Floor have Cash App. Why? Sending money with Cash App actually feels safe. They look out for you if something seems sketchy. They see you might be sending money to a potential scammer. They'll warn you, make you think twice before you hit send. It's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. You can even spice up your payments with custom text, stamps, and backgrounds. Why should paying your friend for that little side bet you made be so boring? If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store. Sign up, enter the code. That's our code on the floor, just on the floor. No 5 in this one. On the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend, and you'll get $10 just for getting started. For limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, no catch. Just download Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code on the floor in your profile. Send $5 to a friend. Within 14 days, you get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. Okay, so let's pose this purely hypothetically. This is not a report. Let's say the Heat don't get Durant. Let's say they decide to pivot younger but get a player with high upside. I'll start with this. Like, what would be, before we get into Spo's offense here, what would be the maximum you'd be willing to pay Jonathan Kuminga per year at this stage of his career?
Oh man. Hit me with a tough question right away. I mean, you hinted at it earlier that I think what he was looking for this past season with the Warriors, where they couldn't come to an agreement, was I believe a $35 million per season is what he was looking for, and they were trying to pay him somewhere around 30, if I remember correctly. That's tough. That's a really tough one right there. Like, I know I say that a lot, but that's a really tough one, just because, again, like, it's one of those things where, yes, it checks off the boxes of that type of trade where, like, okay, you're not going Durant, you're trying to go younger. It checks off those boxes. He's still such a young player. What is he, 22 years old? Like I mentioned before, great athletic traits, has had productive seasons, right? It's not like somebody who's never done anything in the league. Like, he's shown flashes before, and he showed flashes again in the playoffs. But what you said before, you're 100% right. Like, the low feel, low IQ stuff about him, right? It's just that's not great. That's not how the modern NBA works, right? When it comes to just holding on to the ball when you're not an awesome ISO scorer, taking shots in mid-range and you're not a great mid-range shooter. I just think in general, the quick decision-making is not there with him. But again, he's a very young player. So I'd be interested in like, okay, let's try to mold him, right? Because guys grow, right? It's a normal thing. Like, I think it's not that crazy to be optimistic that, like, okay, you get rid of some of these bad decisions. He becomes a quicker processor as he grows in the league. And all of a sudden you have a guy who, who's an athletic wing who can get to the rim, Maybe he's finally shooting at a league average level. He had like a season there, I think, where he shot 36 to 37% from three.
He did. Yeah.
You trim out some of the fat, and I think there's something there. I think the problem is it feels like he still thinks of himself. It's kind of like an Aaron Gordon thing, even though they're very different type of players. It's like he thinks of himself as better than what he is. And, Aaron Gordon got to the Nuggets and became a super role player. And again, they're very different players, but I think Kuminga can be optimized at first as a super role player. Like, let's say if you want to do like a Heat parallel, maybe like a super Caleb Martin, right? But the reason also why Caleb was able to succeed is that the Heat had their offense in place there with Jimmy. Jimmy was the guy who was always playmaking, always able to get to the rim, get to the free throw line. Caleb was able to, come off and, attack closeouts, cut, rebound. Like, I think if he does that stuff first, and I think first of all, he'd be awesome in that role, because if you're, if a team helps off of him and he finds an angle going to the rim, if he gets to the lane, that's going to be tough. Like I mentioned how much he gets to the rim. He also gets to the free throw line a lot when you look at the, the free throw attempts per 75. So again, like that is stuff that we've been asking for, for the Heat, and it's been a problem for years. So there's something there. Then when you start trying to project like how he would fit with the guys currently on the roster, it gets even tougher, because I think he got into trouble there with the Warriors rotation because he doesn't play that well around other guys who are not great shooters. So he projects to be a starter if you acquire him, but I don't like the fit with him, Bam, and Ware all on the floor together.
No.
Right? Like I think it's not that I wouldn't want to see it. I just trying to like project how it would work. I don't love it. I really don't. I don't love the fit. So again, like individually, I would be optimistic about him, but I don't think the fit and the timing as far as the contract doesn't feel like it's something that he will end up doing, even if Durant doesn't happen. Just because I think there's too much. If it was a little bit of a cleaner scenario, like maybe they could get him for a year, and then have to make a decision next year, I think it would be a lot easier to deal with that and try to figure it out. But having to commit 3-4 years to him, that's tough. So maybe if you tantalize him with like, a 1+1 where he makes more money than he would have otherwise, maybe there's something there, but this doesn't feel like something that ultimately happens, honestly, even though it does check off some boxes.
It checks off some boxes, but the problem is that he's in a position to want to get paid and believe he should get paid before he's proven he should get paid. That's the issue. You're right. If Miami had a year with him to figure out the fit and, like you said, sort of clean up some of the fat, in his game, then I think it would make sense. But you're basically introducing a completely raw product, and then you're paying that raw product like it's, finely cooked steak. Like it's not, what I'm saying? It's not going to work. I don't think, for them.
You got to be really sure about it. Like if they did that, if they paid him, I'll be like, okay.
It means they love him. No,
yeah.
they must love him. But again, then I come back to this, then why not acquire him at the deadline when you're in conversations with Golden State? Now, of course, his contract at the time, I should say that is not totally right, because his contract at the time was such that it would have been hard to make the numbers work, right? Because you're taking a look at his deal at the time, because it's been pre-extension. So you're talking about $7.6 million. So maybe that's why. But they've had these conversations. Obviously, there's a relationship there between Mike Dunleavy Jr. and Nick Harrison that goes way back to Duke. And so there's a relationship between Kerr and Spo.
You know what's funny also? You mentioned, sorry to interrupt you. It's just you mentioned the contract that he has is that Kyle Anderson makes a similar amount of money.
Yes.
So theoretically, he could have been coming back. He
could have been. But what would Warriors? I think the Warriors would balk at that because of the upside of coming in and the thought of wanting to see how it looks like. But also, I think when they got Jimmy, there was still a thought, well, maybe he could play with Jimmy. But Kerr abandoned those lineups quickly, and it was only when Steph got hurt in the playoffs where he had no choice, and then he put Kuminga out there with him.
Steph, I was looking at the on-off data. I didn't mention it before, just a quick thing, and it's obviously you can't compare it to what a Heat situation would look like, but the net rating with him and Steph was fantastic. So it's one of those things where like, okay, that makes you feel good in the sense of like, okay, he can play with your best players, even though it wasn't like a perfect fit where everything was awesome. Right. They were very good together. It was when Steph was off the floor where it's like, okay, his flaws are, they're exacerbated. They're put under a microscope, so to speak. And I think that was where he struggled. And the net rating there was like -5. right?
Well, did you
So
check the net rating with him and Jimmy? Because I think that was a huge
we already
issue.
know that was bad. That wasn't.
It was awful. I mean, to the point again, like I said, that Kerr addressed it. Now, of course, the Heat don't have Jimmy anymore, but the Heat also have guys who operate in the mid range. So we'll go to this to close this, and we'll do this quickly because I do not want to do another full podcast on him. But if I was to tell you, you could have DeMar DeRozan at $25 million a year for the next 2 years, or you could sign Kuminga to something around that. You're talking about one guy who's extremely polished. We know exactly what he is, right? For better or worse, mostly better, but they're, playoff performances.
I'm getting
not
like
great
a deja vu right now. I don't know why.
Well, I'm just saying if that's your choice, and generally the Heat would go for the older guy, right? Like that's what we would think. They would go for DeMar, but you can make a case if they're going on a younger timeline and they really believe in Kuminga that it would be Kuminga. But if I was to say to you, let's say they're the same number, because with DeRozan's at 2 years, 50 left, I think. So let's say that you could sign Kuminga for something around that range, which he's already declined less
4 years,
more than that. Yeah, let's say you're doing a 4-year deal at $100 million.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, it'll only be 27 when it's over with, right?
That's the thing. It's like the version of him that I'm imagining where he trims out the stuff that you don't like. Yeah, I'd be willing to pay that. The version that he's shown, no, I'm just not. And so then I default to the DeRozan option because it's like, okay, it'll be over in 2 seasons. So there's like a clear, escape. It's like, okay, for 2 seasons, you do whatever there, even though it's not a great option. You figure that part out. But the Kuminga thing is like, what if you're just locked in 4 years of somebody who's just not very good? I don't think he's a bad player. I just think it's one of those things where for as much as I was trying to sell what he could turn into, perhaps if he figures it out, what if it goes the other way? And it's a bad fit. Imagine it wasn't an awesome fit with Steph Curry, one of the greatest players of all time, who creates so much easy offense.
But you said he played well with Steph. It was when Steph wasn't on the floor that raises the question.
For sure,
how he's play. He doesn't have players quite that good.
It was with the best shooter of all time.
I know.
And again, he played well with him, but it's like the Heat have some of the worst spacing in the league. They might lose Duncan this summer. Right? They're starting 2 bigs who are not great shooters at all, who can hit an open shot. But again, the spacing, the fit, all of it is just not great right now. And if you just want to sell yourself on you do this and you commit to it and you try to figure it out and maybe, you can trade him, if anything, because like you said, he's young and athletic and still, good at getting to the rim. Okay. But I just think that doesn't sound like a Heat move. I think they'd want to keep their flexibility open if they're not sure about this guy. Why are you going to commit to 4 years of him? Because they had opportunity to do other moves like that when the Jimmy stuff, So maybe they're like, okay, the other stuff is not going to work out. Luka's not leaving LA. We didn't get KD. So whatever, whatever the math is there, and they settle for something like that now. Maybe so. It just hasn't really been what they've done in the past. For example, obviously an older player than Kuminga, but Zach LaVine at the deadline, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who's shown a little bit more, they didn't want to commit to it, understandably, right? They didn't really want to commit to him. Because of all the flaws, and he's shown more. He's frankly shown more than Kuminga, and it's a different type of thing. But this doesn't feel like the one. This doesn't feel like the one, and maybe I'll have to eat my words later on. But there's too many things that there's too many holes to poke at. I think here regarding the timing, the fit, and all that.
All right, so we're gonna close it here because you just basically accidentally coined a nickname that I think is going to get used when this ultimately happens, and then we're just going to hit end on this episode. Default DeRozan. There you go. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.